Good evening, race fans. Welcome back to one of these more conversational videos that we do here. You know what? I've been thinking if I should rename this section coffee breaks or something. Coffee breaks, like, we take a little break and we chat more casually about F1. Is that anything? Like, does that sound good? I don't know. You guys let me know. So, this weekend, we had the Monaco Grand Prix, and like I said, I'm not really able to do a full race review, but I still wanted to come on here and sort of give my thoughts on this very hotly debated, kind of controversial race and what happened. And yes, I did bring out the Ayrton Senna t-shirt. The Senna t-shirt has finally made its debut on this channel. Let's go. I mean, like Isaac Hadjar said, there's only one king of Monaco and it's this man right here, so I had to dress accordingly. But anyways, the expectations were really high for this race. I would even say maybe a little too high. Like, maybe we kind of did this to ourselves a little bit, but anyways, because we had a new rule and it was the 2 mandatory pit stops, and of course does not apply to any other race in the calendar. It was designed specifically for Monaco, because as we know, Monaco is a fucking procession every year. It's boring as fuck. So the FIA wanted to experiment, and this is what they came up with. And let me just preface all of this by saying I am all for experimenting in Monaco. I was super into this new rule that they were putting in. And I say this because I know that some people aren't into changing things for Monaco. Like, they say, why should Monaco get special treatment? It's just another race. I don't care if it's historic or whatever. But the thing is that Monaco already doesn't meet the requirements that every other race needs to meet to be in the calendar. It already does not meet the required length to be in the calendar, right? Like, every other race is required to be 305 kilometers long, and Monaco is only like 260 kilometers long. It's a much shorter race than all the other ones. So we're at a place where Monaco's already getting special treatment. So what's more special treatment at this point? And I think it's great. I think it's a way to help preserve this track, and I think anything they can do to make that happen is going to be something that I'm gonna support, most likely. And that also includes the addition of the C6 tires, which were basically designed with Monaco in mind, primarily. Like, they'll be used at other tracks. We saw them in Imola already. They'll probably be used in some of the other classic tracks, but it was made first and foremost for Monaco. So, personally, I was really excited about the 2-stop rule. I was wondering, like, hey, maybe this will actually help to make the race more interesting. And I think it did. I think to some extent, that alone, the fact that we had a new rule, did make the race more interesting, because we were all watching it, wondering what was going to happen, Is this going to actually change the race, or is it going to be more of the same? I think that alone made it more interesting. Obviously, that's just because of the novelty of the rule. But for this year, I think, at least in that respect, it worked. It worked to keep us a little bit more entertained. But then ultimately, it did kind of become the same thing that we usually see, just slightly different, Same ice cream, but a different flavor, as they say. So instead of what usually happens at Monaco, which is teams do their one required pit stop, put on the hard tires, and then just go super slow and try to make the tires last the entire race, and that's it. Instead of that this year, because of the 2 pit stops, we had the teams essentially running bottlenecks. I don't know if that's the right word, but essentially blocking up all the traffic behind them. So basically what the teams were doing was, out of their 2 drivers, they picked the one that was further back on the grid, and they basically said, hey, we need you to go super fucking slow so that nobody behind you can pass, and they basically can't do anything for the rest of the race. Because in Monaco, it's literally impossible to overtake, right? So the drivers ahead can go as slow as they fucking want, because nobody behind them will be able to pass them. So essentially it creates this traffic jam, this DRS train of hell. And what that did was to build a huge gap between those drivers and the drivers ahead. And that way, the driver that was ahead for every team had a huge gap to be able to make a pit stop and come out in the same place. And that's exactly what, in particular, 2 teams did. V-Carb with Liam Lawson and Williams, first with Carlos Sainz so that Albon could do his pit stop, and then they swapped positions, and then Albon did that for a while Carlos did his pit stops. So the drivers were kind of forced to play the team game, right? Because at least one of the drivers was going to get sacrificed for the sake of the other one getting points. So that was kind of interesting in itself. Like it was new. It was a strategy that I don't think I've really seen before, at least not to this extent, not to this magnitude. And it did work mostly for the teams that tried it. Was it good though? See, now that's where we get into the controversial territory, because all of the drivers basically talked about how shit the race was, and in particular, Carlos Sainz, who was one of the perpetrators of this like bottleneck strategy, came out and said that he was upset at what happened and he was disgusted by it, and he said that this was manipulating the race, that he and his team and the other teams were essentially manipulating the race. They were sabotaging it for everybody. Personally, I don't know if manipulation is the word I would use. I think that's taking it too far. I think it was just a strategy, like any other, you know? Like when a car slows down to give his teammate DRS, that's also a strategy, and it's also causing, you know, cars to slow down, and it's causing blockades, and it's causing stuff. It's just strategy, you know? And whether we like it or not, that's just what works, and that's why the teams are doing it. But I do understand where Carlos is coming from, and I do understand what everyone else who is saying this is coming from, because, well, that shit was just not fun to watch at all. Like, was it strategy? Yes. Was it fair? Sure. It's not unfair, it's not illegal. Did it suck shit? Absolutely it did. And this kind of gets me to sort of my point, which is this was not a race. This was barely a race. This certainly did not feel like a race at all. Because not only was the strategy just horrid and awful to watch, but it was made especially upsetting by the fact that it was Monaco, which is already a very challenging track to get a good spectacle out of. And so when this new rule that was put in that has potential goes completely to shit because two teams decide to turn it into this god-awful DRS train situation, decide that they're not gonna let anybody behind them even try to race, then there's just no point in watching this or even running this race at all. And especially when we're claiming that this season of Formula One is one of the most even and equal that we've had in years, and yet we're seeing a Monaco Grand Prix where every driver below P5 has been lapped at least once, then something is clearly very wrong. So now we've come to the obligatory part of the video where we need to tackle the age-old question of what the fuck do we do with Monaco? Because did I think that the race was boring? Yes, less boring than other years maybe, but yes, it was still very boring. But do I want to remove Monaco from the calendar? Ideally not. And I'm sorry if that bothers you, but I am one of those Monaco apologists. Maybe apologist is not the right word. Appreciators? I don't know. Let's leave it at apologists. And so as such, I feel sort of the obligation to remind all of you of all the very good reasons why we should keep Monaco around. And of course, the first one is it's a historic track. I know, hear me out on this. I know you've heard a million times that it's a historic track and you're fucking tired of it. I get it. But it is. It's part of F1's history and part of F1's culture, and that's important. Even just down to how the national anthem of the winner and the champagne song get played by a marching band live instead of just on the speakers. That's huge. That's cool as shit, and that's special to me, especially when we're at a point in time where F1's traditions are sort of dying away, and all of the classic tracks are getting replaced with these sparkly new tracks that are literally just designed to attract celebrities and keep away bad press. Given that we're at that point, I think it's important to preserve some of F1's traditions, if only so that we can have a reminder of where we've come from and where we are at, a reminder of the things that we love about the sport. And if the thing that we love and want to preserve is a track where it's impossible to overtake nowadays, then so be it, goddammit. But if you're unimpressed with the historical argument, then need I remind you that Monaco always, without fail, has the best practice sessions and the best qualifying of the year, and I think this year was no exception. I mean, that quali was gold. Rookie Isaac Hadjar qualifying P6, and Lando Norris sneaking away pole position from Charles Leclerc in the last second. What's not to love? That is some good fucking food. And then another reason, which I think for some reason matters a lot to me, but I'm sure does not matter to a lot of people, is the fact that it's one of the legs of the Triple Crown, which, for anyone that doesn't know by any chance, is a sort of unofficial sort of recognition, like an achievement, which involves winning the Monaco Grand Prix, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and the Indianapolis 500. I don't know why I'm so attached to the Triple Crown. I just think it's such a cool concept. And I don't think that we should, lose that just because we don't want to run the Monaco Grand Prix anymore. And then just generally, it's a pretty cool track. It's very pretty, very scenic, and the vibe there is always really cool. And it's iconic, and for a very long time at least, it's been sort of synonymous with F1, and the culture and the image of F1. I mean, Monaco is supposed to be the most important race of the year. It should be the crowning jewel of the calendar. But because the race has gotten less interesting in the last years, it's kind of lost that prestige a little bit. But it's supposed to be the big weekend of F1. So I'm thinking of all of this, and I'm thinking of all the people who think that Monaco is hopeless and it needs to go. And that makes me kind of sad, because I frankly don't think the track is the problem. Like, sure, it's narrow as hell and it's difficult to drive there, but that's not the track's fault. And it's supposed to be challenging. And seeing these cars, these insanely fast cars, go insanely fast around this track during qualifying is an absolute gem. It's a beauty to behold. So to me, all of the suggestions that I see about fixing the track itself don't really make sense to me, I don't think that's really the way to go. Although, one thing I would change about the track is I would remove the Nouvelle Chicane. I'm sure it's there for safety reasons, but it's just so frustrating to me that that was perfect grounds for a straight, for a DRS zone, not that that's gonna matter next year, but and two drivers cut the chicane on Sunday just out of sheer exasperation. So I just think it should be gone. Get it out of there. But the issue with Monaco seems to clearly lie, for me, with the things that we always talk about, which is, 1, the tires don't degrade fast enough, and B, the cars are too big. It's literally the same issues that we've already been talking about with most of these other tracks. We've already seen races this year that have already been affected by the same things. But of course in Monaco the problem is multiplied because it's a very old track and a very narrow track. So, what are the solutions? I could sit here and list stuff all day long. I mean, this has been debated for years now, so people have thrown a lot of stuff out there. I mean, I think we could just have, softer tires, but they would have to be way softer than the C6. They would have to be like fucking C12 or something. But personally, one solution that sounds very interesting to me for Monaco, which I've been hearing about recently, is keeping Monaco but just as like a show race and not have it count towards the championship. Not have it be officially part of the calendar, just have it be there more for show, just for fun. This to me seems like a win-win because we're preserving the history and heritage of F1 in Monaco, but it also doesn't force anybody to have to watch the Monaco race in order to keep up with the championship. And it would also allow the drivers themselves to be a little more relaxed and just have a little more fun in Monaco, which I think could potentially lead to more action because the drivers won't really lose anything by risking things, right? So they might be more inclined to try overtakes. It would feel more like the Lego race in Miami, basically. Just something fun, like for show. I mean, remember how hard they were laughing when the Lego thing happened? That's how I want Monaco to feel. Maybe not that much, maybe a little more serious than that, but you know what I mean, just for fun. And it also helps us maintain the Triple Crown, even if it's not an official part of the calendar, but I don't think it needs to be. Because, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, because I really am not so familiar with other racing categories like WEC or IndyCar, but I get the impression that the only way to really win the Triple Crown is by being an F1 driver already, because it seems to me like the only people who either have a Triple Crown or are close to the Triple Crown are F1 drivers who then went on to do Le Mans and Indy 500, and not the other way around, you know? It seems a lot harder for a non-F1 driver to get an F1 license, get into a team, and actually compete in Monaco, versus for an F1 driver to step out one season and try out these other two things. So if Monaco is kept as an F1 race but not officially part of the calendar, then maybe that would make it a little easier for drivers in other categories to have a chance to participate in the Monaco Grand Prix and potentially win a Triple Crown. And I know that it's all very tricky considering that, you know, there's scheduling conflicts with the other categories, and there's probably a lot of like drivers that have contract clauses that say they can't participate in other sports and blah blah blah, but it might be a little easier. And I'm sure there are many drivers in other categories that would be perfectly capable of getting into an F1 car and even winning some races. Like, I don't know, 2025 Indianapolis 500 winner and Spanish hero Alex Palou. Or, you know, maybe not, just something that popped into my head. And then because the race won't count for anything, then it could be a really good opportunity to test new things out, like C12 tires, maybe. Or, you know, they should just race in vintage cars. I think that's really what they should do, but the FIA is too chicken to try that. I don't care. Put Oscar Piastri in a McLaren MP44. Right the fuck now. I need to see that. But I don't know. All this is really to say that I would really like for us to be able to preserve Monaco without it being a snooze fest every year. I think it's a beautiful tradition, and I do appreciate that the FIA is trying so hard to keep it as part of the calendar, even though it goes against all of their own regulations. I think they should keep trying things. Even though the two-stop thing failed, I think there are opportunities for new things that we could try. But I know that many of y'all are way more experienced with the Monaco Grand Prix, and you've watched maybe dozens of Monaco Grand Prix. So please go ahead and tell me in the comments, what would you like to see in Monaco? What changes do you think would make the race better? Do you think the race should just be scrapped off the calendar altogether? You tell me. Anyway, that's all for now. Just wanted to give my 2 cents on the whole situation, and I'll see you for my review of the Spanish Grand Prix. I am so excited for that one, folks. Stay fueled and get some rest. Go to bed early today. Do it.